York City throughout the early 1940s, Theodor Geisel pursued an early career of political cartooning to stand up for the majority of the population in the United States. Geisel went under the name Dr. Seuss to challenge isolationism, fascism, and advocate for the United States' participation in World War II. Through his illustrations, he provided access to the complexities of war for the average American citizen. While the country was at war, he used his skills to encourage his countrymen to be vigilant and sponsor the U.S. troops abroad. With easy-to-understand messages and warnings, Geisel's work became a gateway connecting the average American citizen to global events. Later in his career, Geisel continued to incorporate complex political and philosophical messages into his books written for children.
Theodor Geisel grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts, the second child of a successful German-American family. The passage of the 18th Amendment ushered in prohibition and left the Geisels high and dry. Forced to close the brewery that was the family's primary source of income, Geisel's father went on to become the superintendent of the Forest Park Zoo, sparking young Geisel's interest in animals. As a child, he was also inspired by Knox, a company that sold custom automobiles, providing him with the idea of drawing unusually shaped cars.
In 1925, Geisel graduated from Dartmouth College, but just 2 years later was caught drinking bootleg gin in his room with some friends and was banned from writing in the Jack-o'-lantern, the college's humor magazine. To get around this, he began signing a variety of pen names, including L. Pasteur, L. Burbank, and Dr. Theophrastus Seuss, shortened to Dr. Seuss in 1928. Dr. Seuss gained a sizable following, and he settled on his pen name for his work with the magazine. He carried on using this pen name for political cartoons, advertisements, and children's books. By the late 1920s, his style had become synonymous with many different American corporations, such as General Electric and Flit.
He took his mother's name, Seuss, because he was saving Geisel for the day when he wrote the great American novel or history or whatever. He was brilliant.
The 1940s brought with it the rumblings of war in Europe. As tensions grew, Geisel saw the opportunity to take a political stand. He strongly disagreed with the rhetoric of Adolf Hitler. Geisel had an extensive awareness of the continent from a great deal of traveling through his early years, which made Nazism especially daunting. Judith Morgan, co-author of Dr. Seuss and Mr. Geisel, said, "I think he was also teased for his German heritage as a child, so he may have wanted to prove how strongly he felt about America."
The Nazis' action distracted Geisel from drawing pictures of Horton the elephant, and instead forced him to draw pictures of Hitler and Mussolini.
He showed his friend his opinions and cartoons, and then his friend gave him a job at the PM newspaper.
Geisel strongly disagreed with the America First Committee and the pomposity of their leader, Charles Lindbergh. The America First Committee was the largest isolationist, anti-interventionist, and anti-Semitic group before World War II, and firmly believed the United States should stay out of war. The committee advanced their ideas and values through speeches and publications. Geisel said that at one point, "I found myself drawing pictures of Lindbergh the ostrich."
The Roosevelt administration is the third powerful group which has been carrying this country toward war.
Geisel challenged isolationism by publishing in the PM New York City newspaper. The PM newspaper, along with Geisel, was an enemy of America First, making Geisel's derogatory cartooning painless. In The Isolationist, published by the PM newspaper July 16, 1941, isolationists are displayed by Geisel as a whale on top of a mountain in the Alps. He captioned this saying, "There is so much commotion, such fights among fish in the ocean. I'm saving my scalp, living high on an Alp. Dear Lindy, he gave me the notion." Another cartoon by Geisel, shown as a figure labeled America First, reading out a violent children's story called Adolf the Wolf. The caption spoke, "And the wolf chewed up the children and spit out their bones, but those were the foreign children, and it really didn't matter."
When the Japanese allied themselves with the Nazis, their target became the United States. On December 7, 1941, Japanese fighter planes attacked the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The attack lasted approximately 90 minutes. In that time, the Japanese were able to sink ships, damage buildings and aircraft, kill over 2,400 people, and injure over 1,200 Americans. Pearl Harbor put an end to U.S. isolationism and changed Geisel's position on American politics. Geisel acknowledged the war effort and supported the U.S. troops while cartooning derogatorily about the other countries taking part in the war.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor, Geisel increased his cartooning to stand up against the Japanese. While Paris was being occupied by the clanking tanks of the Nazis and I was listening on my radio, I found I could no longer keep my mind on drawing pictures of Horn the elephant, said Dr. Seuss, and started sketching obese, buck-toothed Japanese with slanted eyes. These cartoons were also featured in the PM newspaper the day after the attack. Throughout the depths of the war, Geisel focused on moral building and promoting support on the home front through the purchase of war bonds.
In 1943, Geisel left New York to serve in the United States Army Information and Education Division in California. He was a part of the Army's influential campaign leveraging public opinion on the war effort. As a captain of the Army, he supported the troops throughout the war and helped increase the support around the country. He became an Academy Awards filmmaking winner and commander of the animation department. He had created many private snafus during and after the war that relate to the war and protest against topics in the war, especially fascism. These promotional films also show many of his well-known characters created for his satire.
The sales of the PM increased when Geisel began working there, especially during peak war times. By the end of each day, around 450,000 copies were sold. His cartoons supported the soldiers and helped shape them up to be a determined army. They opposed people and topics that many people throughout World War II disputed, such as fascism, isolationism, and Nazism. Geisel gained support from this because of the agreeing population, and people were grateful to help him continue with his type of work.
His children's books influenced families after the war with an incorporated political slant. For example, the Sneetches displays the Starbelly Sneetches as the special Sneetches, meaning the powerful race or class. The Sneetches without stars on their bellies were the other Sneetches, not as privileged as the Starbellies. Geisel relates this to many forms of inequality by showing how the advantaged Sneetches boast about how they were created.
Geisel owned up to his behavior by recognizing the racist side of his cartoons. I had a gentleman with a pigtail. I colored him yellow and called him a Chinaman. That's the way things were 50 years ago. In later editions, I refer to him as a Chinese man. I've taken the color out of him and removed the pigtail. Geisel later wrote Horn Hears a Who, dedicated to my great friend Mitsuki Nakamura of Kyoto, Japan, as an apology to how he portrayed the Japanese during World War II. Recently, on February 17, 2002, Dr. Seuss National Memorial Sculpture Garden opened in Springfield, Massachusetts, with sculptures of him and many of his familiar characters, many rooted from within the art of his political cartoons.
Cartoonists, authors, and illustrators are inspired by Geisel's work. Now that his story is starting to reappear, people are realizing that their style replicates his and use similar characters. His distinctive style uses animals, automobiles, and things that he has experienced to show a political message. Writers have also taken his style and work ethic and incorporated political ideas into their own writing.
In conclusion, Geisel's challenge to the United States government helped others feel motivated in the future to speak up for themselves politically. He was determined to inform society about the difficulties around the world by making others aware of the happenings in other countries during World War II. In the midst of war, Geisel supported the troops through his easily understood political cartoons. Not everything he did made sense, but as he often says, I like nonsense. It wakes up the brain cells. Fantasy is a necessary ingredient in living. It's a way of looking at life through the wrong end of the telescope, which is what I do, and that enables you to laugh at life's realities.